Hi and welcome to my video on absolute value. This covers all absolute value topics from grades 6 through 9. So I'm going to bring you from the very beginning of what is absolute value all the way through some more advanced topics used in algebra. So this right here is these bars are the absolute value bars. And this very thing means the absolute value of 4. Now, so I wrote here, this is absolutely, literally what that means, the absolute value of 4. And so this would be the absolute value of -4. And yeah, this is not too earth-shattering, but what does the absolute value mean? Well, the absolute value means the distance to 0, not to 0, but the distance between that number and 0. So the absolute value of 4 also could mean the distance between 4 and 0. And the absolute value of -4 would be the distance between -4 and 0. So what is that distance? Well, let's find 4 here. And I'll put it in blue. 4 is right here. 0 is right here. And that distance, okay, that was not good. Let's see if I can do a little bit better. That distance is 4. Let's look at -4. Well, -4 is over here, and that distance is 4 as well. So if I rewrote this here, the absolute value of 4 is 4, and the absolute value of -4 is also 4. And that's it. At the 6th grade level, that is the most basic level. You're really just taking the positive version of the number. And why is it the positive number? Because distance is positive. Notice I accidentally called this the distance from 4 to 0. No, we're not going a direction with this. We're just saying, what is that distance? Well, that distance right here is 4. If you can't go -4 spaces. You can't travel -4 feet. If you say that you traveled -4 feet, you're placing a direction on it also. So these don't have a direction, they just have a distance. What is that distance? How far are you traveling? Now later on in 7th grade, you'll see something like this, where it's the absolute value of 7 minus 2. And this is pretty easy. You can treat these like parentheses, I suppose, where this would be the absolute value of 5, which is really just 5. And so 5 would be our answer. But also, in 7th grade, you're asked to read this. What does this literally mean? This means the distance between 7 and 2. And that distance between 7 and 2, well, if you have 2 here and you have 7 here, this distance right there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, would be 5. And that's why the absolute value of this is 5. It's that distance between the two numbers. Now, somewhere around this time, you'll also, around 7th grade, maybe a little bit in 6th grade, you'll see something like this. The absolute value of some number, so that's what this means. The absolute value of some number is going to be equal to 8. What is that number? What number belongs in the place of the variable x? Well, that number could be one of two things. X could be 8, and x could be -8. And sometimes they'll put these together where it's just x is equal to plus or minus 8. So you can kind of squeeze them both in the same statement. And this is saying, again, the distance between some number and 0 is 8. Well, that distance here, this distance is 8, and this distance is 8. So positive 8 and -8 have the same absolute value. You'll also see something like this. The absolute value of some number is less than 6, and that's an inequality right there. Everybody forgets the name of that? Inequality. Right there. So they introduce this inequality, and what we got here is what number would fit in for x again. Now it's not just it's not equal, in fact. It's anything, the absolute value of some number has to be smaller than 6. Well, what number could fit there? We could take the absolute value of 5, and the absolute value of 4, and the absolute value of 3, and the absolute value of 2, and the absolute value of 1, and 0, and so on. But man, you could take the absolute value of 5.5 too. That's smaller than 6. Then 4.062. That the absolute value of that is smaller than 6. There's a lot of answers to this. So instead of trying to list all of the answers for it, what we do is we'll do it on a graph, and and we actually do it a couple different ways. We can do it on a graph, and we can show it another way too. So I will do it on the graph. I would do an open circle, because if I don't know if you remember, but if it's like this, it's an open circle, which means we're not including that number. And if it's like this and it's a closed circle, we are including that number. So we're not including 6. But what we can do is we can do this. This is the graphical representation of the answer. Because here I have, like I just showed, I could have -5. That's smaller than 6. I can have the absolute value of 5. That's smaller than 6. And those are both right here. See, the absolute value of -5 is smaller than 6. And the absolute value of 5 is smaller than 6. So anything inside of here has an absolute value that is smaller than 6. You can also, if I imagine this, what if I turn this around and I did this? What do you think that would look like? Well, it has to be bigger than 6, and that would be looking like this. Oops. It would be open circle on the 6's, but they have to be bigger. So they go like that. And so let me return to this other one here and erase this and show you something else that happens. We have this, and I'll erase my other part here. So we have this here. Now, let's think about this. We could have another way of writing this very statement here, right here, is you can say -6 is less than some number is less than 6. That's also taught. I think we're starting to get into 9th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade algebra part here, where these two things say the exact same thing. And definitely in algebra, you start doing stuff like this. So now you have the distance between some number and, oh, this is not the distance between some number and 4. So some number plus 4, the absolute value of some number plus 4 is less than 5. So what we would do is we'd use a similar trick that I showed you, and we would rewrite this as, so this is the same thing as saying -5 is less than x plus 4, which is less than 5. And then we start to solve it like an equation. And we subtract 4 because we're trying to isolate x. Now, the question is, which 5 do you pick? You pick both of them. Actually, you do this and this. And -5 minus 4 is -9. Is less than, these cancel out, x, and that's 1. So this is also said to be x is between -9 and 1. That's what the statement means. So what I could do is I could graph it where it's not including, so it's an open circle and 1. And these are all the numbers that work for that, for this original inequality here. using absolute value. And let's pick one. I'll pick the number -3. So that means I can plug -3 in for x. So -3 plus 4 is less than 5. Let's see. What's the absolute value of -3? What's -3 plus 4? -3 plus 4 is 1. And the absolute value of 1 is just 1, which is less than 5. So that is true. So when I plug a number from in here into my original inequality, I get a true statement. That's what it's all about. And so we get to the last part here. This is definitely algebra territory where we start to graph. We have two variables now. We have y and we have x. And I think that what's a good way to visualize this is, or not to visualize, but to create the graph is to, wow, how crooked is that line? Is really just to make an XY table. And for X, we can choose anything we want, but we want to be able to graph this. So I'm going to choose numbers, I want to choose X numbers. See, this is the X axis. I want to choose any of these X numbers so I can see what's on the graph. And maybe I'll start with -3. And I'll go from -4 all the way to 4. I'll plug those numbers into my chart. -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'll extend this line. So then I got to ask myself a bunch of questions. And these aren't so hard. So when I plug -4 in for x, what's the absolute value of -4? So the absolute value of -4 is 4. So then y is equal to 4. I put that there. And then you should, this is kind of rapid fire. If I have -3 in here, absolute value of -3 is 3. So this would be 3. And we got 2. So if I put in -1 would be, would be 1. The absolute value of 0 is 0. Absolute value of 1 is 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. And hopefully what you notice here is some patterns happening. Not only the fact that everything's positive, but take a look at this. The numbers repeat, okay? And that is critical. So I'm going to graph these points. If I, let's see, I'll do it in red. So I'll graph this. -4, 4. -4, 4 is right here. -3, 3 is here. -2, 2 is here. -1, 1. 0, 0. 1, 1. Oh, look at that. It's bouncing back up. 2, 2. 3, 3. And 4, 4. And we draw a line here. We draw a line because the data isn't just on the dots. We have data in between the dots. Like I could have -5, not 5, -2.1, and the absolute value of -2.1 is 2.1, and -2.1 is it's like right here. So there's a little data point. That line represents all the data points. So we draw a line because there's absolute values in between the dots as well. And we draw lines here because it'll just keep on going. It makes a perfect V. And so there's a visual of all of the data that works in this little equation. And so that's what you got. These are the major ideas. I didn't go through every tiny detail, but these are the major ideas that happen in grades 6 through 9 when they're talking about absolute value.